Welcome to Advent of Tessellations 2025. My name is Madonna Yoder, and you're joining hundreds of folders around the world on this 25-day journey into the infinite world of repeating patterns folded from a single sheet of paper. You'll discover many different twists in this challenge, building up to advanced patterns with flagstone motifs of trapezoid twists. Welcome back to Advent of Tess. This is day 14. Named Helicopters, one of my own designs, and we're going to be folding new twists, both the open trapezoid twist and the open two-fold skinny mixed depth hexagon. So it's another mixed depth and two-fold twist, but this time it has 6 pleats instead of the 4 that we saw yesterday. So let's dive in. The very center is exactly the same as yesterday's pattern. So we'll have a closed hexagon twist in the middle with the mountain folds heading straight up to the corner, the valley folds one space above. We'll do this on all 6 of our corners. And leave the center of the paper 3D as we're setting up this hexagon. I'm moving a little bit faster through the center bit since it is exactly identical to what we folded yesterday in near miss. So we've got the 3D center. I'm going to make that a little bit smaller, leaving 2 grid spacings vertical in that closed hexagon tower. And then I'll tap the center, bop it, grab it on 3 sides, and give it a sharp twist around. And it looks a little bit jumbled, but we can make sure that all of our folds go back on grid lines and smooth it out. So the bone folder can also be helpful in this, making sure that those valley folds are actually on the grid lines. And we'll see when we flip to the back side in just a moment whether or not we've been successful in getting all of our valley folds on grid lines. So flipping over, if you see this nice tight hole, that means all of your valley folds are actually on grid lines, because those on this side of the paper are the mountain folds that define the hole. From here, we're going to put in closed triangle twists as densely as possible on all 6 of these pleats. And I'll start with the pleat that happens to be horizontal and going out to my right. So the new valley fold is going to lay right along the folded mountain of the next pleat over. My mountain fold will be 1 space away, and this is a closed triangle twist, so all 3 of my mountain folds will come to the same grid intersection. As I put in this triangle, I'm going to be erasing the pleat from the center that goes past the triangle. And my new mountain fold in the 3rd direction, I have another reference, which is it's 2 spaces away from the parallel mountain fold. And we're going to go around in a clockwise order. And each time we put in a new twist, we're going to lift the hidden pleat from under the previous triangle. And it's important to do it in this order because then you'll have consistent pleat overlaps everywhere and you'll have less need for compound wraps. And we're going to put in the next closed triangle twist. This time that 3rd mountain fold is going to pass right under the corner of the previous triangle twist. Notice that that triangle is folding on a grid line running through the center to help that get in place, and then it flattens out once the new twist is fully in place. And we can go ahead and squash that twist. Next up, we'll repeat by lifting the hidden pleat from under the triangle we just folded, letting it lay on top, and then putting in our second pleat of the triangle twist with the valley right along the folded mountain of the next pleat over, and putting in our third pleat right under the corner of our previous triangle, and press to squash. So I smooth it out with the bone folder, then rotate and repeat, lifting the pleat that's below the twist I just put in. I'll put in a new closed triangle twist at the same spacing as the rest of them, and press to squash. Rotating again, we'll do exactly the same thing another time, lifting the pleat that's under the previous triangle twist. And I know I'm folding this way faster than is likely for most folders, but what I want to get in your head is the repetition, that we're doing this once, we're doing it twice, and then that second triangle is repeated again and again and again. And in one sense, this level of repetition is more like some other types of origami, where when you see things done on one side, it's also done on all the other sides. But there's another layer to it, that we're doing these in a particular order because of how the pleats are overlapping. And that procedure will only get us so far in folding tessellations. Doing 6 of the exact same thing, while it works really well for this pattern, for this amount of this pattern, I just want to say that does fall apart when you have more repeats on the paper. So continuing around, for my 6th triangle, the first thing I'm going to do is the same, which is lift that pleat above the triangle that we just put in. And then I want to notice that I have another pleat coming through here and I need to do something about it. I also have a 60-degree angle, which means that it is a candidate for a compound wrap. Specifically, it's a 60-degree angle between a mountain and a valley fold that are both coming from twists. In the case of the valley fold, the twist isn't folded yet, but that doesn't stop us. In this situation, we want to open the mountain and the valley fold of our first triangle twist and pop down so the valley fold can bounce on the line of the mountain fold, bounce down and reflect over, and then it'll hit the valley down below. So it's bounced over, it hits the valley of the pleat from the first triangle twist, and bounces again to create a 3-way intersection of valley folds. This is closely followed, one grid spacing away, by the same bouncing of mountain folds. And then in order to get all of this to lay down flat, we need to put in the third pleat of our new triangle twist. And the key thing is to put in that third pleat without erasing anything that we already did. So in order to achieve that, I'm typically holding the compound wrap on the front and the back with one hand while I'm finding that third pleat with my other hand. And then we can press press the 3 corners to squash our new closed triangle twist. Okay, all of that was also in yesterday's video. what we're going to do differently today when we flip over, and by the way, I'm paying attention to where that compound wrap is. That compound wrap is going to come up to the top. Notice that at the compound wrap, there's one space between parallel pleats. Then the next direction clockwise, there's 3 spaces, and everywhere else has 2. We want to work in this area with 3 spaces. And one of the things I mentioned yesterday is that there's 2 ways to attach a trapezoid to these 2 triangle pleats. We saw that same initial setup with the 2 different ways of attaching the closed trapezoid led to completely different things on the back of the pattern. And today we're using the second way of attaching the trapezoid. So we will not have a pleat going in this direction. Instead, that 3rd single depth pleat will go down below. And in particular, we want to find, and this is a feature of all open trapezoid twists, and I'll present it in multiple different ways. So don't worry if you can't see the reference right away, because this is a new twist. So it's kind of like we're putting in an open hexagon twist, where when I open up my pleat overlap, I'm looking for, hey, I've got this pleat with its mountain fold coming in here. I have this other pleat with its mountain fold being very hard to draw on, coming in here. And where those 2 mountain folds come together is a point of a puffy hexagon star. So, and that would be outlining that point as the center of an open hexagon twist. Today, instead of folding an open hexagon, we're going to fold an open trapezoid, which is going to have a very similar setup for the single depth pleats. We're going to have this other pointy star of the puffy hexagon, and then those 3 pleats are our only single depth pleats. The mountain of the middle single depth pleat continues onward on the same grid line to become the mountain of the double depth pleat, which is down here and comes out to, so the valley fold comes straight to that triangle hole. And we can squash the twist in place. So typically I prefer to fold by recognizing, based on the existing pleats, where the other pleats of the twist need to go. Now that I already have one, I can look around for other references, like the valley of the double depth pleat comes to the closed triangle hole. Also, the 3rd single depth pleat makes a tube pleat going around the central hexagon. These are all important details. So now when I come down here, working clockwise around, I can say, hey, the valley of my double depth pleat comes to that closed triangle hole. And it runs into this single depth pleat. So now we're going to do a different advanced compound wrap. Last time we did the single depth pleat going over the double depth pleat. This time we're doing the double depth pleat going over the single depth pleat. And for this compound wrap, we have the valley hitting the mountain 60 degrees apart, one triangle corner apart. And we're going to pop that mountain down and let the valley bounce until it hits the valley down below. And then it's going to bounce again. And we're also going to have a three-way intersection of valleys at this first bounce point. And since we know that this valley belongs to a double depth plate, that bounce is going to take two spaces. So the mountain folds that will follow are two spaces away instead of one. So we can go ahead and pull the rest of this pleat overlap apart. And while we're at it, go ahead and send our third single depth pleat two spaces away, making that tube pleat around the central hexagon, and also making these 2 points of the puffy hexagon star. And then we have this wrap situation that is actually splitting the mountain fold coming out of the trapezoid twist on the double depth pleat. It's splitting that immediately right at the corner of the twist. So we have these two spaces between our zigzagging mountain and valley folds. We're able to set that up and have the corner of our trapezoid twist floating two whole spaces past this other plate that's coming through. This is the power of compound wraps. And then we can press to squash. Rotating around, we're going to repeat those steps again. So the first thing we did is find the valley fold of the double depth pleat coming from the closed triangle hole. Then we popped down, we opened the pleat from the previous trapezoid and popped down the mountain so the valley could zig until it hits the valley that's already existing under this mountain fold, and then zag. We are going to have two spaces before our mountain folds follow, because this is our double depth plate that's coming across. Then we're opening up the pleat overlap from the triangles and running our third single depth plate down and making a tube relative to the pleat closer to the hexagon. Then we can close up our compound wrap. We just want to make sure that we have all of these mountain folds. This single depth plate is the continuation of the single depth plate from the previous trapezoid. And press to squash. And again, we'll repeat. This time I'll do it without drawing. I have that valley fold coming out from the closed triangle hole. I'm letting it bounce over the mountain fold and come down into the valley down below, setting up this compound wrap of a double depth plate over a single depth plate. And I'm opening up my overlap from the triangles and running my third direction of single depth plate down with tube plate spacing around the central hexagon, letting my compound wrap close flat. Remember, the plate in this direction is double depth and the plate in this direction is single depth. And if you want to learn more about all the variants of these advanced compound wraps, you can check out my advanced wraps video on my YouTube channel. And squashing the twist, we can continue around. This time we start the same. We've got that valley fold coming from the closed triangle hole. It's on the direction that doesn't already have a fold and isn't right next to the previous trapezoid, so there's only one direction to go. And then we'll set up that compound wrap, making sure there's 2 spaces between this new valley that zigzags through and the mountain that follows. Then we can open up our overlapped pleats and put in our new pleat going down. This is going to look slightly different because instead of a pleat overlap, in here we have the compound wrap. So this is going to thin down to 1 space. So depending on the precision of your grid, that might be a little crunchy, but we just need the first bit to lay down flat and the compound wrap to lay down flat in order to squash our open trapezoid twist. From here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of our 6 trapezoids, and it's time to put in the 6th one. I'm going to draw everything out here because while for those last 3 you could refer back to the second one, this one is newer, so I'm going to add more detail. I have that valley of the double depth pleat coming from the closed triangle hole. I'll open the pleat from the previous trapezoid and let that valley bounce first this way and then that way as it hits these folds from the previous trapezoid. And as part of that process, we're going to throw off some other folds that'll continue on out. So we've got that 3-way intersection of valleys with 1 mountain, 3-way intersection of valleys again with 1 mountain, and these folds are going to go 2 spaces before they hit the corresponding mountain folds. This time, in order to get those mountain folds in place, I need to pop up the tucked under part of the compound wrap. From there, I can get the rest of the folds of my compound wrap, that zigzag of mountains 2 spaces away from the zigzag of valleys. From here, I can find the 3rd single depth pleat of my trapezoid twist. It's coming down under this existing trapezoid. Now it might be tempting to just fold through that trapezoid, and that is a valid option, but I want to encourage you to apply the compound wrap. So you can take a look at all of these other compound wraps that we've already folded. It's just that this time we're putting the single depth pleat under first, and we already have our double depth pleat. So we're looking at where that valley fold meets the new mountain and saying, okay, that's where our valley bounces. So we'll get rid of this extra valley fold line. That valley is going to hit the valley of our new single depth pleat, and those are going to make a 3-way intersection. And at this first bounce point, we're going to have a 3-way intersection of valleys, and well, that hits right at the corner of the trapezoid. That means that we need a 3-way intersection of mountains at that point, which, with the trapezoid twist squashed, looks like a 4-way intersection. But if you have the printed crease patterns, you're folding from those, you can see the ghost line continuing in. That's the third mountain of the three-way intersection. We have our second three-way intersection of mountains here, and we can form that compound wrap into place. And with both compound wraps, one on either side of our new trapezoid, we can press from the top to squash. Okay, so last time we resolved each of these compound wraps with a single twist. This time we'll have both the mixed depth skinny hexagon twist and an additional triangle twist that will be back on the side with the trapezoids. So in order to get that hexagon twist, I'm going to first open up one of my wraps, and in order to do that, I took my paper and I popped the three-way intersection of valleys on this side down so I could have a pleat coming straight from the corner of the trapezoid. On the other side, that looks like restoring the trapezoid and just opening up that wrap. So this is a 3D area that's not going to lay down flat unless we do something else. Flipping back, that something else is our hexagon twist. So here's a feature that we can use as a guiding landmark. We have one of the corners of an open hexagon puffy star. This is our double depth pleat. This is a single depth pleat. One of the guiding features of that open hexagon puffy star is that you go one in, one out. And that will also be true for this twist for the single depth pleats. So we are going to have two single depth pleats and then a double depth pleat. We already have our double depth here, so we need a single depth in this direction. And it's going to follow that same one in, one out structure. So our valley is going to hit at this point, which, let's see, where's a good reference elsewhere in the paper? Really, I'm referencing it to this one in, one out. And it's making another point of our puffy hexagon star. And then we'll see another point right here with our next valley fold going down in here, but that's going to be a double depth pleat. Before we get there, I want to deal with the double depth pleat in here. I've got this one in, one out, one in, one out for the single depth pleats. For the double depth, that's going to be two in and two out. So two spaces going in, put a little arrow on that, and then two spaces going out. And where that ends, we get our next mountain fold, shooting back into this next compound wrap, which we're going to pretend that the compound wrap is just flat paper, as in we're going to keep it all the way folded, and we'll fold through even though it makes it a little bit lumpy. So we've got our two in, two out, and then we continue one in, one out to find our next mountain fold. And here we have an additional clue with our 24 division grid. We have our mountain fold, and then our valley, and then the edge of the paper. So we've got 2 in, 2 out, 1 in, 1 out, 1 in, 1 out again. And then we have the mountain fold of our new double depth pleat, which we already found the valley for earlier. Now, having this set up in this like very strong peanut shape isn't great for squashing. So I'm going to pull a little bit until we can see functionally more of these points of the puffy hexagon star. It just so happens that both of these points are right next to each other. So 1 in, 1 out, 1 in, 1 out adds up to 2 in, 2 out. Bit of tessellation math for you. Which actually, like, literally is how I think about this, as 2 single depth pleats adding up to create a double depth pleat, and that's how I taught it in the video where I teach each twist used in Advent of Tess individually, which you can find on the Advent of Tess 2025 hub page, or also on my YouTube channel. So once we have this layout, the pleats are much happier laying down flat, and we can press from the top to squash. Okay, so pop quiz. If you were deciding which way to work around the center from here, would you choose this way where everything gets really bunched up, or this way where you have a nice open space between plates? I don't know about you, but I'm going to choose this way. It's also clockwise, which is conveniently the direction we've been working, which is interesting given that when you flip sides of the paper, the direction that you work generally swaps. But as I mentioned at the beginning, this is not yet a typical way of folding more repeats of the pattern. This is just how we fold the center. So continuing on around, I want to open up my pleat overlaps. In particular, I have this pleat overlap with a pleat from the new hexagon twist. Definitely opening that one up first. And then I'm restoring the true pleat from the trapezoid. Again, flipping over, you can see that trapezoid is now very happy, and the pleat coming underneath is just hanging out 3D. Flipping back, I can start finding the pointy star, or one tip of the puffy hexagon star. And then over here, I'll find the valley for my next pleat. So we started with one point of the puffy hexagon star. Now we have a second. And I'm going to put that single depth pleat in place before taking a look at my double depth pleat. So my double depth pleat's coming down in through here. I'm going to come in 2 and then out 2 and then send off a new direction of pleat. It has to be single depth because it's right next to my double depth pleat. I can choose at this point to kind of relax the paper into that in, out mode. And right now, this new pleat is headed straight for my previous mixed depth hexagon. But it meets a pleat before I get there. And this is the perfect setup to erase the extension of this pleat over top and do a triangle wrap. So you'll notice I had to firm up the valley of my new pleat in order to get that triangle wrap firmly in place. From there, I can continue. So I did the 2 in, 2 out. Here's 1 in, 1 out. Next, mountain and valley. 1 in, 1 out. Next, mountain. And then 2 in, 2 out. That valley is 2 spaces away, and I can relax that side of the twist and press from the top to squash. So at this point, we could choose to flip over and deal with that triangle twist right away. It is going to be a triangle twist. And by the way, speaking of repeating the pattern more, the symmetries are something that's starting to be set up. I'm going to, in the simplest way to repeat this pattern, treat this mixed depth hexagon as a position of twofold rotational symmetry. So it'll have the same thing on opposite sides. That means that this triangle needs to be a position of threefold rotational symmetry. And that tells me what size of triangle, closed, open, double open, it's going to be. Now this pleat coming in from the mixed depth hexagon is hitting the next pleat in 1 space. This one is hitting in 2 spaces. So it can't be a closed triangle with the corner there, because that would be different distances to the same corner. Instead, it's going to have to be an open triangle. So one corner is here and the other corner is here, and both corners have 1 space to hit the next twist. And that is kind of the math that holds together the pattern that repeats infinitely. It's all about counting spaces and making sure they're the same. Moving on to the next mixed depth hexagon twist, I'm going to open up my pleat overlaps. And again, I'm moving clockwise around, mostly because it's going to be easier to do the wrap from this side. And restoring the double depth pleat from the trapezoid, which opens up the compound wrap. Then I'll find my second single depth pleat on this side, which does make a pleat overlap. And I'll follow 2 in, 2 out to get my full double depth pleat and find the location of my new mountain fold, which, by the way, has tube pleat spacing relative to the parallel pleat. That new mountain fold comes with a valley, and it's easiest to put in place with a triangle wrap. Then it goes 1 in, 1 out. We have another direction of single depth pleat going 1 in, 1 out. This will fold down right over the edge of the paper. And our final direction is going to be a double depth pleat. And with all of that in place, we can press from the top to squash. And rotating, we're going to do the same thing again, opening up our pleats, restoring the double depth pleat to the trapezoid on the other side, which is opening up the compound wrap. And then we notice the point of our puffy hexagon corner, our puffy hexagon star. Haven't standardized the language for that. We find another point with another single depth pleat. One cue that I have based on the compound wrap here is that this makes a tube. Anytime you're relying on references from other temporary folds it can still be useful, but proceed with caution. Make sure it's the same on all 6 sides before you rely on it too much. Then we have our tube pleat spacing. We also have our 2 in, 2 out. New valley heads out this way. And the triangle wrap. And then the 1 in, 1 out, new single depth pleat, 2 in, 2 out. And we can pull that a little to make it easier to lay the pleats flat and press from the top to squash. And I want to make sure as I'm rotating again that I do actually have all the pleats that I've put in fully folded. I noticed that this one had come out. I want to keep that in there. And then I'm ready to open up my pleat overlap and open the compound wrap. And here I start to notice, hey, there is more going on if I have this extra pleat folded. So let's say that we unfold that, put our new single depth pleat in, and then fold it back. That is going to really lock things in place. It's also going to be okay to squash on. And for our double depth pleat, we have the 2 in, need to put the 2 out, and making sure that the pleat from the previous twist is still in place. I can put in my new single depth pleat, again with the tube pleat spacing, and do the triangle wrap. Then find my new single depth pleat. And what's happened here is that my pleat from the first mixed depth hexagon has run into, the mountain of that pleat has run into the valley of my new double depth pleat and erased the valley. It's actually made it, if we had more grid, into a triple depth pleat. 1, 2, 3 spaces down to the valley. And that is perfectly fine. We do want to make sure that the hexagon is quite happy everywhere else before we squash. But that is definitely something we can squash on top of. No folds have intruded into the twist itself. We just have a really bulky spot there. And you might have seen me kind of sliding the edge to where I wanted it before I firmed that up. And then we're going to open up our next pleat overlaps. So opening this pleat restores our double depth valley. Then we can open up the overlap in here. Restore the double depth pleat to the trapezoid. And it might be useful at this point to look at our previous twists and say, hey, from this corner of this hexagon, which is exactly the same as this corner that I'm holding in my left hand of our first hexagon, how many spaces does this mountain fold go before it hits the valley of the next twist. And it goes 1, 2, 3 spaces. Okay, we can use that information. It's going to go 1, 2, 3 spaces, and that valley is going to come in at 120 degrees, so 2 triangle corners. And we can put that in place and make a triangle wrap. Then we can go about finding the rest of our pleats on this mixed depth hexagon as usual. That was our second single depth pleat closest to the center. We've got the 2 in, 2 out, 2 pleat spacing, putting in the new triangle wrap. I'm also going to relax these sides so I have less tension. I need to go 1 in, 1 out, find the new pleat, 1 in, 1 out. Got this single space of mountain fold and the valley fold 2 spaces below, which is 1 space away from the triangle wrap, just like we've seen it elsewhere in the pattern. And I'm going to make sure that my paper is happy. There was a little bit of a hang up in here somehow, but I just pulled on that corner while holding the other end of the edge to make sure it was in a good position. And then we can press from the top to squash. And we can give the previous mixed depth hexagon a nice smoothing now that it's in a less bumpy area. From here, all of our work that's left is on the opposite side of the paper. So we'll flip over. And like I explained before, these triangle wraps need to turn into open triangle twists in order to be a position of symmetry in the broader pattern. However, that makes the corner of the twist touch the edge of the paper. And if that's something that you're not confident with, or that your paper is not doing very nicely, you could totally make these closed triangle twists, and there are ways to get that to repeat too. So I'm going to go around, and for each of these triangle wraps, I'm going to shift the mountain fold 1 space over, jump the valley to the far side, setting up an open triangle twist, and pressing to squash. Yeah. Like I said, the paper may not cooperate putting a twist corner at the edge. You can have all the experience in the world, but the paper may still give you some grief with that. So one thing about this pattern, I had mentioned that the mixed depth hexagon twists are the positions of 2-fold symmetry, and these triangles are positions of 3-fold symmetry. Of course, we have the 6-fold symmetry in the very center, and all those numbers are saying is how many evenly spaced directions around this thing are going to look the same. And let's see, where was I going with this? Oh yes, so you could run with that and go and fold as much of this pattern as you like on whatever size of grid you like. For this particular pattern, it's going to be very easy to, well, easy to fold more of the pattern than I've ever folded, because I've only at most folded this on 32 grid divisions. I know, it's micro scale. It's what I do for fun. And that is going to, so as soon as you hit 36, 40, 48 divisions, you've folded more of this pattern than I have. And there is the crease pattern in the Advent of Tess ebook to help you do that. There is also a crease pattern for an extremely related design where you have the exact same center, but the mixed depth hexagon twist on the back, instead of being 2-fold rotationally symmetric, is 3-fold, and then you don't have to deal with that extra triangle. And so then you have fewer positions overall on the pattern, but I will say the 3-fold mixed depth hexagon takes up a large space in the tiling, which makes it tricky to fold without causing a whole bunch of other things to need to be folded at the same time. So that's what's going on in the Advent of Tess ebook. I also invite you to share your photos and tag me at Gathering Folds. This one in particular has really nice backlighting. I mean, they all do, but it's a little flower in a pond, so to speak. And then when you fold more of the pattern, you get kind of more of a peanut shape on the backlit mixed depth hexagons. And with the 3-fold mixed depth hexagons, it's like from the front, it's like those twists aren't even there because the background grid is aligning with the center. But this actually is the pattern I was talking about yesterday that tipped me off for the flagstone pattern. So yesterday, the flagstone version is in the ebook under day 13. But what tipped me off is I was looking back at a recording I made about this pattern, and that recording said, hey, if that was a closed trapezoid, this would be flagstone. And then I had to fold it. So all the patterns are related. It's just a matter of what relationships you choose to focus on. So happy folding, everyone. And I'll see you tomorrow when we're folding another pattern that has flagstone motif of triangles on the back, but this time they're open triangles. It has open trapezoid twists, and we get another new twist. Looks like the friendly mixed depth rhombus, but it's the unfriendly mixed depth rhombus, which is why this trapezoid is tucked up under one of the other plates. So happy folding, and I'll see you there.